The day started like any other in the small town of Brooksville, Oregon. 7-year-old Emma Carter spent her Sunday afternoon at her grandmother's cozy farmhouse at the edge of a thick, endless forest. The air smelled of wildflowers, the sound of cicadas filled the warm breeze, and Emma laughed as she chased fireflies barefoot across the backyard. Her grandmother called out from the porch, warning her not to go too far, and Emma nodded, giggling, as she darted behind a tree. It was the last time anyone saw her. When her grandmother went inside to answer a phone call, Emma was there. When she came back out 2 minutes later, the little girl was gone. Panic set in instantly. At first, she thought Emma had wandered into the shed or around the corner, but after minutes of frantic calling with no response, she called Emma's mother and then 911. Within the hour, Brooksville's entire police force was on scene, quickly, joined by volunteers, firefighters, and even neighboring counties. Search parties fanned out into the surrounding woods. Helicopters hovered above, and drones scanned the landscape from the sky. But the forest was vast, full of ravines, hidden streams, and dangerous wildlife. As daylight faded, so did the families. Hope, that first night, was sleepless, filled with prayer and tears. By the second day, state police and specialized rescue teams had arrived, combing every inch of land within a 10-mile radius. Every lead turned cold. Every hour without food or water made survival less likely. Emma's parents clung to each other, their faces pale and hollow, their hands trembling as officers updated them. At the start of the third day, 72 hours since Emma disappeared, something had to change. And that's when Officer Daniel Hayes stepped out of his patrol car with his partner, a 3-year-old German Shepherd named Rex, the best search and rescue dog in the state. While drones, radios, and maps had failed, the department was betting on something far more primal: instinct, loyalty, and a dog's unmatched sense of smell. And from the moment Rex arrived, the entire atmosphere shifted. Rex was no ordinary police dog, with a sleek black hand-tan coat, piercing amber eyes, and muscles rippling under his harness. He carried himself like a soldier. Trained since he was a puppy, Rex had already located missing hikers, drowning victims, and even elderly patients lost in the woods. But Officer Hayes knew this case was different. Emma was just a little girl, alone in a dangerous wilderness. For 3 full days, the clock was against them, and the odds weren't good. Kneeling in the dirt, Hayes held out Emma's favorite pink sweater, the one she'd been wearing when she vanished. Rex sniffed it deeply, his ears flicking forward, tail stiff, every sense engaged. "Find her, boy," Hayes whispered. "Bring Emma home." Without hesitation, Rex lunged forward, nose to the ground, pulling Hayes into the forest with a strength that nearly yanked him off his feet. The terrain was rough, the forest thick and wild, but Rex moved like an arrow, following an invisible thread no human eye could see. For hours they hiked deeper, crossing streams, climbing ridges, and ducking under low-hanging branches. The other officers and volunteers followed behind, their radios crackling updates as the sun dipped lower and the shadows grew long and cold. Hayes kept talking to Rex the whole way, his voice low and steady, reminding him they weren't giving up. Not now, not ever. But as dusk settled and the temperature dropped, doubt crept in. It had been nearly 72 hours. A child so young couldn't survive much longer without food, water, or shelter. And then, just as fatigue began to take its toll, Rex stopped dead in his tracks. His ears shot up, his head tilted slightly to the right. Hayes froze, watching his partner's body tense like a coiled spring. Something had caught Rex's attention, something no one else could hear. The forest was silent except for the distant rustle of leaves and the chirp of crickets. Hayes followed Rex's gaze into a dense patch of underbrush ahead. "What is it, boy?" he whispered, his hand resting on Rex's harness. The dog's ears twitched again, his nostrils flaring. And then, so faint it could have been mistaken for the wind, a broken, fragile sound floated through the trees. "Rex." Hayes blinked. He thought he imagined it, but Rex had already heard it. With a sharp bark, the German shepherd tore through the brush, yanking Hayes behind him. Branches whipped against their faces, mud splashed beneath their boots, hearts pounded in unison. "Emma," Hayes shouted, but there was no reply. Rex didn't need one, his instincts told him everything. Deeper into the woods they went, following the soft, shaky whisper that had somehow carried just enough to reach Rex's incredible ears. And then, under a tangled mess of fallen branches and moss, they found her. Emma lay curled in a tiny hollow, beneath a massive fallen tree, her face pale, lips cracked, eyes fluttering weakly. When she saw Rex, her trembling hand reached out, and she whispered again, this time barely audible, "I knew you'd come." Hayes dropped to his knees, pulling his jacket off to wrap her shivering body. She was ice cold, dehydrated, and exhausted. But she was alive. Rex lay down beside her immediately, pressing his warm body against hers, keeping her from slipping into hypothermia. Hayes called it in over the radio, his voice shaking as he said the words no one thought they'd hear after. 72 hours. We've got her. She's alive." The forest seemed to hold its breath as Officer Hayes knelt beside Emma, his trembling hands wrapping his jacket around her frail frame. Her skin was icy cold to the touch, her lips cracked from dehydration, and her breath shallow. Hayes could feel his throat tightening, terrified she might slip away right there in front of him. But Rex stayed pressed against her side, his warm body acting like a living blanket. And Hayes swore he saw a faint spark return to her glassy eyes as the dog rested his head gently on her tiny arm. "Stay with me, Emma," Hayes whispered, his voice hoarse from exhaustion and fear. "We've got you now. You're going home." The rest of the search team arrived moments later, their footsteps crunching through dry leaves, radios buzzing with excitement and disbelief. Some of the volunteers burst into tears at the sight of the little girl, alive after 72 hours in the wilderness. A paramedic knelt quickly, checking Emma's pulse, flashing a light into her eyes and murmuring reassurances to Hayes. "She's weak, dehydrated, but she's alive. We need to get her out now." The stretcher was readied, but the terrain was steep and uneven. Helicopter rescue wasn't possible here. They'd have to carry her out on foot. Hayes wanted to help, but Rex wouldn't leave Emma's side, not even for a second. Whenever someone tried to take his place, the German shepherd growled softly, protective and unyielding. It was as though Rex had taken an oath. No harm would touch this child again, not while he drew breath. And so they moved, slowly, carefully, a silent chain of determination threading through the darkening woods. The hike back felt endless. Every snap of a branch underfoot echoed too loudly. The air was heavy with damp moss and lingering mist. Somewhere, in the distance, an owl called mournfully, and a chill wind danced through the trees. Hayes' heart pounded with each step, torn between relief and gnawing dread. She was alive now, but would she make it through the night? Emma whimpered faintly from time to time, sometimes mumbling words that made no sense, sometimes whispering Rex's name like a fragile prayer. Every time she said it, Rex responded, a soft nuzzle against her cheek, a small whine. The reassurance of silent loyalty. When they finally emerged from the tree line, floodlights blinded Hayes for a moment. A crowd had gathered, officers, volunteers, neighbors, and news crews who'd been waiting anxiously at the forest's edge. The collective gasp that rippled through the people when they saw Emma alive was unforgettable. Her mother screamed her name and tried to run forward, but officers gently held her back until paramedics had secured Emma onto a gurney and loaded her into the ambulance. Only then did her parents climb in, tears streaming down their faces, clutching each other like they never wanted to let go. Hayes leaned heavily against a tree, finally letting out the breath he'd been holding for 3 days. Rex sat beside him, tail curled against his paws, his amber eyes reflecting the floodlights. For a long moment, Hayes just stared at his partner, wondering how a single whisper, a sound too faint for any human ear, had pulled them through the impossible. In his heart, he knew Rex had done more than find Emma. He had given her a second chance at life. Later that night, at Brooksville General Hospital, Emma lay propped against pillows, an IV dripping into her tiny arm. She looked pale, but better color had returned to her cheeks, and the slow rhythm of her breathing reassured everyone who watched over her. Her parents sat close by, holding her hands, their relief written across every line of their exhausted faces. Officer Hayes stood at the foot of the bed, Rex lying loyally at his feet, head resting on his paws. "Emma," Hayes said softly, "I have to ask you something. When we were out there in the forest, did you call Rex's name?" Emma nodded. Slowly, her small voice barely above a whisper. I did. I thought maybe if I called, someone would come." Hayes frowned slightly, confused. "But how did you know his name? You've never met Rex before." Her mother gently brushed hair from Emma's forehead. "Sweetheart, did someone tell you about the police dog?" Emma shook her head. "No. I didn't know, I just..." She hesitated, searching for the right words, her tiny brow furrowed. "I dreamed about him. I was so scared. I heard a dog barking in my dream, and he was running toward me. So when I woke up, I whispered his name, because somehow I knew it." The room went silent. Hayes' chest tightened, goosebumps prickling his arms. Rex's ears twitched as though he recognized her words. There was no logical explanation. Emma had never seen or heard of Rex before this day, yet she had whispered his name in the darkness, and Rex had heard her as if the forest itself carried her voice straight to him. Doctors later confirmed that if Rex hadn't found her when he did, Emma would not have survived another night in the cold. It was a miracle in every sense of the word, one no science or training manual could fully explain. News of the rescue spread quickly, and soon the entire country knew about the police dog who had heard a whisper and saved a life. Social media flooded with pictures of Rex sitting proudly beside Emma's hospital bed, his amber eyes glowing softly under the fluorescent lights. Hashtags like #HeroRex and #MiracleWhisper trended for days. People sent letters, gifts, and even handmade collars from across the country, calling Rex an angel in fur. But Hayes knew the truth deep in his soul. This wasn't just a story about training or instincts. Something bigger had connected Emma and Rex that day. Something no one could explain, and maybe wasn't meant to. 2 weeks later, the town of Brooksville gathered in the park under a bright blue sky. Banners fluttered in the warm breeze. Children clutched balloons, and families lined up to catch a glimpse of the heroes of the hour. Emma, now healthy and full of life, sat atop her father's shoulders, waving shyly at the cheering crowd. At the center of it all stood Officer Hayes and Rex. The mayor stepped up to the podium, clearing his throat as he addressed the crowd. "Today," he began, "we honor courage, we honor loyalty, and we honor a hero who walks on 4 legs." Turning to Rex, he smiled warmly. "For extraordinary bravery and an act that saved a life, we award you, Rex, the Medal of Valor." The crowd erupted in applause as Hayes clipped the small gold medal onto Rex's harness. The German shepherd tilted his head curiously, tail wagging slowly, as if he didn't quite understand why everyone was cheering. But Emma understood. She ran forward, throwing her arms around Rex's neck. The dog licked her cheek, his soft whine carrying more emotion than words ever could. Hayes stood back, watching them, pride swelling in his chest. For 3 endless days, hope had seemed lost. Yet here they were, alive, together, bound forever by an invisible thread forged in the quiet heart of the Oregon forest. And sometimes, Hayes thought, miracles didn't come with trumpets or thunder. Sometimes they came in the softest form, a whisper in the dark, and a dog who refused not to listen. If this incredible story of Rex and Emma touched your heart, give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to Canine Era for more heroic tales that celebrate the unbreakable bond between humans and canine South. Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear fur.